Welcome back, Stas23 here, back again with some knife therapy, and today I have for you the Cold Steel Knives Engage. This knife comes in at $165, and you can pick it up at most big box retailers like Blade HQ. I think DLT has them, and I'll definitely have links down below if you're interested in this one. Definitely want to watch this one. Let's get the specs out of the way. You have a total length of 8.188 inches, so it's a full-size EDC knife, a 3.5-inch blade. In between these two areas is 3.5-inch grip area. If you want to choke up in this forward finger choil, it's about 4.7 inches. 0.53 thickness on the handle, so a little above average, and closed width in the pocket is pretty wide from here to here of 1.71 inches. The behind the edge thickness on this particular knife is around 26 thousandths at the thinnest portion, sharpened at 18 degrees per side. This knife is definitely geared toward being a hard use knife, great as a work knife if that's something you're looking for. But let's take a closer look at this. You have a nice clip point blade with satin finish on here. It's not my favorite finish. It's definitely a fingerprint magnet. I've wiped it off plenty of times before I did this. You got a nice little top swedge here, a very meaty and beefy tip right there. You're not going to have to worry about snapping that too easily. You have dual thumb studs that are nice and massive, cone shaped there, and they are removable. Cold Steel's bannering right here. Blade steel on this is CPM S35 VN steel, which is a great steel, and Cold Steel usually does an excellent job on their heat treat. No jimping, but it's not needed because you have a very large flat spot there. Or if you choke up, you got a nice sweet spot where it dips in right here. You do have a forward finger choil, or you could say a large sharpening choil if it doesn't fit your fingers. It fits mine just fine. You have, a little bit into the steel, and then it goes into the handle. I like that, so you're not wasting any more edge than you need to. The name of the knife written on the front right there. Could have done without that. And now it's time to put this knife through its paces. You're definitely not going to want to miss this because we sure beat on this thing. As I got started on this cardboard, I noticed and remembered how awesome Cold Steel's edges usually come, and this one is no exception. Came with a nice toothy edge on it, very, very sharp, and it doesn't really matter how thick it is behind the edge whenever you have a very sharp edge. Now it will once that edge starts to dull down some, or if you're going through some thick material that are catching the sidewalls of that secondary bevel. Comfortable so far, and most knives usually are comfortable doing cardboard. But now check that out. That was a knot right there and there. Now we go on to the wood, and we're testing the ergonomics, how well that edge is still biting. And in the beginning it was doing really well. I start increasing pressure. The more and more I get into it, it was biting deep into the wood, and that edge was really shining once again here. I will show y'all, you'll see me stop in a little bit, and that's whenever I started putting there you go, put a good bit of pressure. I'm showing you right there. The corner of that lock bar has a 90-degree edge on it, and it also has a little point on each side. It was kind of poking my hand. Pretty uncomfortable, but this is a hard use style knife. You could always throw a glove on it if you were going to be doing this type of cutting. You may never do this type of cutting, but it did a good job. Now we move on, just a bunch of different materials. That's just some nylon strap right there. Goes through it just fine. Now it does struggle through this thick saddle leather right here because the side walls are kind of compressing against the side of it. The edge is still screaming sharp here. I'm push cutting this bungee cord and I was kind of shocked right here. Usually those thick edges struggle with the rubber tubing, but went through it just fine. As well as this thick corner cardboard, no issue whatsoever. I can really see the toothiness of the edge because this denim, if it's not a toothy edge, it just takes a little bit more effort to get into it. No problem whatsoever. Now, by the time we get here, sometimes the edges are just garbage. but the edge was still going very strong. I did mainly push cuts here. It was a little uncomfortable doing this pinch style cutting with the knife, but nothing that I was too concerned with. At this point in the rope cutting, I was kind of shocked because this is a factory edge, and factory edges aren't usually that impressive, but I end up getting 60 cuts done with this sisal rope, and that's pretty impressive. Especially I only stopped because I think I ran out of rope and my hand was just absolutely worn out. This was like the third test I did that day, but definitely I felt the edge at the end, and it still felt like it had a good working edge left on it. Now we're going to get into some of the hard use testing. We're going to do a little batoning. This is some very seasoned oak right here, and it is full of knots. I hit this thing so hard, I probably should just left the volume up, but I did have a fan going, so it wouldn't have sounded that good. It was extremely hot in the garage, and after the accident, I'm not really supposed to be in the heat too long, so I figured I would just kind of let y'all know how it was. No shock in that handle, felt good in the hand, and did not affect the lock in the least. I knew it would be able to handle this, especially the way that this lock is set up with those huge stop pins in between that locking interface like that. And watch, I'm going to show you all in a little while how knotted up this wood really is. I don't know if it's, yeah, here it is. Look at that. You see that large dip in there? Extremely knotted up, and we're going to do it again. Definitely felt just fine. If you need to do some small kindling or something like that with your knife, you know, probably not what you would be your first choice of grabbing. I would grab a fixed blade, but if that's all you had in your pocket, maybe it's in a survival situation or something, and you happen to have that knife in your pocket, I think it would be definitely up for the task. Look at that bow and that wood. Definitely some hard stuff, and the action's still smooth. I did loosen up the pivot just a hair from all that impact. No problem. I just put a little bit more Loctite on it. Now we're just going to beat it into this 2x4, and it split really quick on this one, but I moved it up a little past. I think there was a knot or something in the front, and I really got to beating on that just to see, you know, if any vibrations or anything could cause that to, I mean, up and down vibrations could cause the lock to do anything funny, and I had no issues. Solid in there, no deformation to the edge, and I'm just having fun. Now all this stuff will void your warranty, I'm sure. So just don't do it. Be smart with your knife. If you don't want to void your warranty, follow their rules. And I understand that. So, and now we come to chopping through these 3 copper wires, and wow, was I impressed. This thing, first shot, goes straight through it. No issues whatsoever. Watch this. Bam! Straight through, and usually that'll deform the very apex. Absolutely no deformation, no rolling, no chipping. Alright, we're going to do some edge impacting testing on this aluminum bar stock. Try to hit it in this area. 3 strikes so far. This edge has held up really well. One, 2, and 3. Got a little something right here. Nope. It was just a piece of aluminum chunk. Let's see. Wow. same up and down, little side to side, maybe just loosened up some, but definitely call that a win. Super impressed with the heat treat on this knife. No chips, no rolling after using it. And yeah, just knocked it into a tree and stood on it. Weighed 200 pounds. Lock didn't fail. Was gonna go sideways, but just ended up snapping the blade. Wow, I was really impressed with how well it held up. I hope y'all enjoyed it. I enjoyed doing that for y'all. And of course, all that stuff was stupid. It's my knife. I want to put it through its paces, and it handled it just fine. A lot of that stuff would void your warranty, so don't do it. I do it so you don't have to. Now, let's take a look at the action on this knife. Like I said, you have a thumb stud deployer. This knife is riding on pretty large phosphor bronze washers with a very thin Teflon washer against the blade. Gives you like a buttery feeling action. The knife is not very snappy. That is because there's no traditional detent, like a detent ball, kind of like an axis lock. You're riding on spring tension of this lock. This lock has a spring right here that I'll show y'all later on the inside of this. And smooth for what it is. Usually Teflon's not the most flickety knives. This one is broken in nicely now. It opens just fine, and I can get it to drop most of the time. The thumb studs are very easily accessible since they're so gigantic. They easy to get to left or right-handed, and being that this is a totally ambidextrous knife because of the lock and the pocket clip and the dual studs, you're easily able to actuate the lock and to deploy the knife left-handed. One thing that I've noticed, and I heard my buddy Jared from These Knives talk about it as well, the knife, being that it doesn't have a detent ball like a traditional detent, the detent is kind of weak on the knife. It's keeping the knife in there, but as far as breaking it loose, the spring's just not, the tension's not that strong on it. Now, I'm sure if you wanted to either get a stronger spring or stretch those coils out on it a little bit, you may better improve that some. I'm not worried about it opening in my pocket, but it would probably help the action on coming out a little bit better. For me, it's more of a slow roll knife, and I'm fine with that. It just depends on what you're wanting it for. All right, let's close it up and check out the handle of the knife. Your scales on this are G10. However, a lot of sites said they were FRN. That is not correct. You can check on the Cold Steel site. These are definitely G10 scales. They're smooth finish on here. The little lines right there give you a little bit of added traction. You have a very slight contour on the scales. The ergos were really comfortable in pretty much all the cutting. The only time that I had any issue with the ergos is whenever I was really bearing down on this handle. This part of my hand was getting caught on the edge of that lock bar, because there's a 90-degree edge on both sides of it right here, and then that little point where the jump is, it was starting to wear out the inside of my hand. But being that this is a hard user, if I was doing something that hard, like when I was pushing into that wood, I could throw some gloves on there and it'd be just fine. The hardware on the knife is a T8 pivot, somewhat of a decorative pivot with a little spiraling on there. And I don't know why, but they put T6 all over the body screws and on the clip screws. It doesn't really make sense for such a beefy knife like this. Do they work fine? Yes, but why not just put them all T8? I think that would have been much better. You have a deep carry pocket clip, not something you see on Cold Steel knives. And I will say it works much better than the traditional Cold Steel pocket clip. I usually hate their pocket clips. This one goes in and out of the pocket nicely. Let's check it out in the pocket. While it does go in the pocket nicely and holds it there pretty well, that's what you have sticking out. It is a pocket hog. As you can see right here, it's taking up about almost half of the pocket. Not an issue for me, but I will say you will feel this in the pocket. It's a pocket chunk. It's a weighty knife, but you know in that going into it. On on the pocket clip. I wish they would have countersunk those screws and the clip. That's just, something more for material to get caught on. I don't know. But I am glad to see them use a deep carry clip. You have a massive, I can almost put my pinky through that, massive lanyard hole there. There's your blade to handle ratio, almost 1-to-1. They did a good job of bringing it all the way to the end right there. You're not going to have to worry about coming in contact in closed position because of all the stuff right here. You do have a black G10 backspacer. This knife definitely has excellent rigidity side to side, up and down. You have full stainless steel aligners that have been milled out on the inside. Hopefully y'all can see that there, and on the bottom as well. Lots of weight relieving, but this thing is a chunk. Let's check it out on the scale. First off, in grams, 186 grams and a whopping 6.56 ounces. Yep, it's a beast. You're going to feel it. Now let's talk about the new Atlas lock from Cold Steel. I'm not going to discuss too much, but yes, it is pretty much the shark lock, and they just kind of move things around a little bit. But let's talk about it as a locking mechanism. At first, as far as this lock being back right here, it felt kind of awkward. I had gotten used to the shark lock and where it's at and how it sticks up like that, so it's easier for me to actuate. So whenever this one came, it just felt really weird. I would open it. When I wanted to close it, I was, trying to see where to put my hands, and I wanted to do like this, but then, I was worried that the blade's going to come in contact with me. And if you want to, do it safely, you use it, and then you got to kind of scoot your hands back, and you can swing it closed without your fingers being in the blade path. After a day or two of open and close it, I have gotten used to it, and I can sling it down now. It's broken in nicely. Once you use these knives, they start to break in pretty quickly. It still feels a little awkward, but it's doable for me. I would have much rather them see it, put it up here somewhere, do the same thing like right here. I think it would have been a lot easier and a lot more fluent to put your finger right there instead of having to come all the way to the back like that. But, if you get this knife, you'll just have to see what works best for you. I still prefer the shark lock, but, that's me. As for the strength of the lock, I think I proved it pretty well in that testing footage. This thing is an absolute tank. There's just a very slight up and down, but it's more, I think, the two pins just sliding on the steel, and the way it's set up. Once I wear that bottom piece down a little more, this lock will push forward some, and you'll have less and less. But definitely not concerned in the least about any of that little slight up and down, because it's not gonna close on me. I promise you that. Very sturdy lock, and the heat treat on this knife just absolutely blew my mind. This thing has absolutely no rolls, no chips whatsoever in this edge. I don't feel anything, and it still has a pretty serviceable working edge. That's all you can ask for after beating a knife down like that. Some quick size comparisons. Two of my favorite Cold Steels, the Code 4 and the American Lawman. It's much closer to the American Lawman. Code 4 is a good bit bigger. You have the Hogue Ritter RSK and the RSK Mini. It is very, very close to the full-size RSK. And lastly, we have the Spyderco PM2, which is about the same exact length as the Engage, and the Para 3, which it dwarfs. All right, let's do some quick nitpicks and complaints. First off, it's got a 90-degree edge on the spine right here, all the way to about right here, which that's all that really matters because I don't go up here that much. But it's just a little uncomfortable, a little sharp right there. I would love to see them put a little bevel to knock that off. The thumb studs aren't the most comfortable in the world, but they're doable. Whenever they sharpened it, they must have did a power strop or something like that. And that's just a pet peeve of mine. You can see, I don't know if you can see that right above on the primary grind right there. Just kind of buffs that. I'm not a fan of the satin finish. It's a fingerprint magnet. I would have much rather see a stonewash finish. It would hide wear a little bit better. I wish they would have went with T8 hardware throughout on the body and the clip screws. The lock, I talked about it before. We should put a little chamfer on the lock bar and knock that little corner off right there, because it really ate into my hand whenever I was doing pressure cuts. And I would have loved to see them countersink those screws and the clip as well. Other than that, those are basically minor nitpicks, because, for a hard use knife, those things don't matter as much. My final thoughts on the knife, is it worth $165? And this is how I would answer that. If you're looking for a extremely overbuilt folding knife and you don't mind the extra heft, I think you would be definitely happy with this knife. It's something that's starting to grow on me, and not something that I would EDC every day. It's just a little too chunky and a little too wide for me. And it's just, I have other knives that I prefer, and I don't need a knife really for anything crazy. But if I do, this is the one I'll grab. But $165, I think it's worth it. You got a new locking mechanism, or a new design for them at least. The steel held up outstanding, and it was fairly comfortable in hand, besides that little issue I had right there. Like they went with a deep carry clip. I'm excited to see the other models they do like this. Maybe they'll do something different with that. I don't know. Maybe if enough people make some noise about it. But if it doesn't bother you, then maybe it's just me. So there you go. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave them down below. I hope everybody's having an absolute amazing day. I will see y'all on the next one. Peace.